don't think I've done one of these audio recordings for no apparent reason in a while. But I know I've been doing a lot of philosophy stuff, but I don't really know what I'm gonna do for philosophy right now. To be honest, I think I said all I need to say. The thing is, right now I have a lot of different topics that I would talk about, but keep forgetting them, or it's just too small to make a video about. There's no topic really video worthy. So I guess I'm just gonna make a random, nothing said video. And before that, I guess I could talk about the thing on spiritual death and soul and such. Okay, now that I hate the fact that the walls aren't even soundproof, but once again, I do think fundamentally, people should be trying to achieve a, a sort of, yes, accelerationism, but also a sort of spiritual death, which I guess someone could clarify as eternal ego death, which hasn't really been succeeded before. I mean, when was the last time that you've actually experienced an ego death that doesn't just lead to an ego rebirth? The thing about spirit is that spirit is eternal, dying, well, spirit obviously, and it recreates itself. Every experience that you have is a traumatic experience just by living, because living itself is a traumatic experience. Self recreates itself every single second, because every single second that it experiences, the self is deconstructed. You die every second, you have a mental breakdown every second, but it's not strong enough to be considered a mental breakdown by your standards. But yes, you die every second. And some spiritual deaths are so large that you call them mental breakdowns, or ego death, or trauma, things that completely reconstruct you. While small mental breakdowns and small deaths, small spiritual deaths, which you could call technically nothing, if you really want to say that, um, they are so small in the sort of traumatic experience you experience by living. It's so small that the self is able to recreate itself almost perfectly in replica to the self that already died. The self that's reborn is identical to the self that already died because there's no fundamentally extreme traumatic experience. It's only a small one. The small one that everyone experiences, so it's not considered trauma. But, of course, this is opposed to the spiritual. Well, it's not really spiritual death. It's more, I guess you would call it a sort of spiritual. I don't know. The things you call ego death, trauma, things that are extreme, mental breakdowns. I guess you could call it a spiritual breakdown if you really want to. I can't really find a word for it because it's not spiritual death, but it's a large spirit. It's a large version of our normal eternal spiritual death. Instead of just a small traumatic experience that recreates yourself, which is our everyday existence as spirit, it's a large spiritual death that causes everything to simply stop. It causes spirit to simply stop existing for a certain moment and then continue existing as a new spirit, right? I mean, Lacanian trauma, it's Lacanian trauma. Except for, obviously, you don't really stop being spirit, your spirit turns into soul. That moment where you experience a trauma, your spirit turns into soul. Instead of having a spiritual coping mechanism, it turns into pure soul and you become one with lack. Trauma is a form of mystical connection to Yaldabaoth. By experiencing trauma, you connect with Yaldabaoth, and that's what you try to avoid. You don't want that. No one wants to see Yaldabaoth. No one wants to see that deformed, hideous. I don't want to see her. That's all. Um, but the fact is, either way, that people don't want to see their soul, so they cope with spirit. Once a traumatic incident is done, the spirit is recreated in a holistically different way. Sometimes it's only a small big difference, such as a new coping mechanism, or sometimes it's a large big difference, like a recreated identity which would still be a recreated spirit, but just, it's a larger thing. I'm using identity in the way other people use it, not in the way I use it philosophically. And that sort of thing is the basis of the thing. We should be trying to achieve complete identity and soul, because when spirit stops functioning and you're left entirety in soul, well, since soul is lack and spirit functions kind of like the ego and the superego and the id and such, all of those nonsense, the spirit kind of functions to turn the soul's energy, the soul's sort of drive of insecurity into action. The spirit turns the soul's insecurity into desire. Insecurity is desire, however, it's the spirit tries to draw a distinction between the two by having predisposed pre-spiritual desire, which is insecurity, and post-spiritual desire, which is desire as we usually think of it. It's the same thing. You can be insecure and look in yourself in the mirror and like complain about yourself. I personally don't, but that sort of like experience is desire before it reaches spirit, but still being expressed through spirit, since you can't see your soul ever. But what am I saying? What I'm trying to say is that the soul creates insecurity and spirit processes it into desire, even though insecurity is desire. Spirit tries to draw a distinction, because if spirit didn't exist, insecurity and desire would be completely mixed together, and there would be no defining distinction. Spirit causes the distinction. Um, I mean, post spiritual insecurity is desire, and you can see that in your actions. Every single thing you do is technically caused by insecurity, but since it's been processed through spirit, it can be hidden up and seen as desire. The desire to walk, the desire to live, the desire to eat, to breathe. Those sorts of things are just insecurity. Insecurity of death, insecurity of being still, insecurity of starvation, insecurity of, well, not breathing, which is called I forgot what it's called. When you stop breathing, that. All of those things, the spirit is kind of like a processor thing, but it's unnecessary. It's only made necessary because people want to separate insecurity from desire. They don't want to be masochists. They don't want to be sadists. They don't want to be, wait, it's sadists, but whatever. They don't want to be depressive. They don't want to be self destructive in general. And I've already gone over that in one of the descriptions of one of my videos or whatever. But basically, um, I think that the destruction of the spirit in absolute entirety, which means basically an eternal traumatic experience, which I haven't really processed how you would be able to create such a thing. But if you could create such a thing, if you could make such a process happen, where you would be eternally without spirit, pure soul, as one does while experiencing a traumatic event. If you were eternally pure soul without spirit, the chances are is that you would be unable to function as purely soul, and that would be a better way to truly connect with Yaldabaoth and act as an accelerating point for spiritual warfare, well, mystical warfare, in order to defeat Yaldabaoth by being one with Yaldabaoth and accelerating the process of Yaldabaoth's consumption as it is always. Um, kind of have to be her to defeat her, so it just makes sense that obviously you would have to destroy spirit and become pure soul in order to do that, since that is our connection to Yaldabaoth. I don't exactly know how that would work, but if that eventually becomes an able ability for people to do, it would be really great for the accelerationist program. Yeah, this is pretty short. I used to have a lot of other things to say, but I'm not exactly sure. I I don't really like dialectical materialism. It misunderstands dialectic. I have my own definition of what dialectical materialism was supposed to be, or historical materialism, but it's all basically just garbage, anyways. Dialectics is useful, but in the end, it is still a socially constructed idea based on explaining something that could easily be explained through things like territorialization or other things that I'm not even going to get to because I still haven't finished reading Deleuze. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't finished. But what I do know is that Marx isn't right about everything. Dialectics can be kind of pointless sometimes. Um, but I do find the idea of sublation very useful. And, yeah, okay. I don't exactly know what I'm gonna do right now. I may used to have more things to talk about, but I guess that's really it. Um, I still wish that Rad Queer Revolution would work, but things don't really go how things should, and I don't know. Let me check my channel. I think I can find a few more things to say. Maybe. Perhaps. I don't know. Um, I'm gonna check my posts. Oh yeah, Zhang. I don't like Zhang. I don't like his analytical psychology thing. Please don't compare me to Zhang. I know that there's some similar things, there's some similar aspects, but my mystical psychoanalysis is different from his whatever mythology crap. And I don't like Zhang. And seriously, he does assume culture as a biological fact. It pisses me off. Yes, spirit is mainly defined by culture. Yes, culture does play a large role in psychology and psychoanalysis. However, it's not a biological fact. Nature has a lot of culture because nature is culture and culture is nature. However, that does not mean that it's a biological fact. I don't like junk. I really don't. What? What just happened? I don't like these buttons. Um, I've decided to call my philosophical thing to separate from the Satanists. The yaldabaoth mysticism. Because ultimately that's just what it is. And I mean, Satanism is kind of a incorrect term for it, considering I don't even care about Satan. Nick Land isn't a accelerationist. I mean, you could claim it's right accelerationism or whatever, but accelerationism includes communization. And yes, I mean communization, not for the communization theory, but as communization theory, as understanding communism as a gradual process and an act instead of a utopia. And communism, yeah, I know it's like kind of stupid considering that I don't even believe in communization theory as in abstract labor and idealistic stuff, but I do believe in communization theory's main core of communism as a process. And that process does not need a dictatorship of the proletariat. It's that process is the communization that you see in accelerationism, not right accelerationism, not left accelerationism. Unconditional accelerationism is communization. That's all I really have to say. Um, I don't really have more to say. I finished Nick's Land. I don't know if I've said that before, but I did. Um, I miss I miss Jonestown. I do. I miss Jim Jones' reference. I miss it. Can I say that? It's like, are they gonna arrest me for that shit? Because I know they just love to claim any trans person to be like a terrorist, a evil murderer terrorist who's actually like a sure or whatever. I'm not gonna read the description that I put over there, but I'll just summarize what I said here. By the way, um, self-destructivity is the most mentally sane thing to exist, yet because it's unproductive to capital, which a lot of the things of mental health and mental illness is largely because of capital. Majority of the definition of mental illness is just whatever isn't productive to capital. I mean, if I didn't know better, if I didn't know that mental illness to a degree does exist, it just isn't a mental illness. It's not a mental illness, it's just a different state of mentality or a different state of coping. But they'll just call it mental illness anyways. But what defines something that's quote mental illness and not just enough for mentality or personality or whatever is if it's productive to capital or not. And that pisses me off. And if you even go by what's mentally sane or what's the logical conclusion of sanity, which you would assume is what neurotypicalism is, right? The logical conclusion of what is considered sanity. Well, if we're going off of psychoanalysis on what's considered sanity, self-destructivity is sanity. Self-destructivity is just sanity. That's the most sane thing you can do. But because it's unproductive to capital, it's considered enough a mental illness or a symptom of a mental illness. You see, things like this is why the whole mental health industry is so stupid. But whatever, I got to 16 minutes. I guess that's enough. I can stop talking now. You guys don't have to hear me for another few days. This becomes kind of like a chore sometimes. But I don't know, it's just like I need to find more things to talk about and ways to express philosophical ideas. Aw, rainbow fluff. Bows and stuff. That's so adorable. Whatever. I'm still trying to find a way to really connect it to mysticism and stuff. Although I could say technically that, I mean, really, eternal traumatic experience would be a really good way to start. But I'm not gonna traumatize myself. Well, actually, I would, and I've been trying. But it seems stupid, and I just look like, why I look pretty dumb, don't I? I mean, seriously, why would I do this? But once again, try to achieve some sort of mysticism in order to really speak to Yaldabaoth herself, to achieve more philosophical basis to justify more things for accelerating and political campaigning and destroying everything and annihilation. Why? I just have to reach out and actually talk to Yaldabaoth, which requires reconstruction, and reconstruction takes destruction. But deterritorializing myself is it's a heavy job, and I don't know how this shit even works. And I mean, I've tried. I don't know. I'm tired. Actually, today I saw something so horrible that I genuinely couldn't go back to sleep. It was like what 6, and I was being told go back to sleep. I tried. Yeah, no, I couldn't because every second I thought maybe this time would be the time that something breaks, like the fan breaks or something that gets into my house, or my skin hits something metal and it just tears off, or I don't know, something would happen, and I mean everything just starts to get kind of itchy and feel weird, and it's strange, really. Okay, I probably shouldn't crack my knuckles, but whatever. It's strange because when you see something like of people really being treated horribly, it makes everything feel like there's a chance of that happening to you, no matter what you do. There's really, I mean, it's true. You can't really do anything because in the end, there's always going to be a chance of something like that happening. It doesn't just You don't just get away from karma by being a good person, because karma doesn't care if you're a good person or not. It just cares about its own sadistic tendencies. It doesn't really care. And I know people say, well, karma, by definition, if you're actually using the actual religious definition, is when bad people get something bad happening to them and good people get something good happening. But the thing is, I'm talking about karma as a tendency of things to happen to those who deserve it. Good people sometimes deserve to die, I guess, because that's what happens. And who am I to say who deserves what? Because you know, no one is. Hell, if Yaldabaoth's the one to say who deserves it. Yaldabaoth deserves nothing. And yet, look, if we're gonna say that God gets to choose what's right and what's wrong, let's be so for real. Because Yaldabaoth does not get to decide that everything she's done is suddenly some perfect utopian world. Let's be real. Um, but whatever, I guess. But it's just actually kind of scary, and it's like, when things like that happens, I really like step back for a second and think, do I really want to be like doing this? Like, is this really, well, anything I do actually, do I want to do any of that? Because once again, all of that's gonna have consequence, and I don't want to be put on a metal, whatever it's called, it's like a metal hook. I don't want to be put on a metal hook, and I don't want to be skinned. I don't want to be skinned. But in a way, there's no way to avoid that, and I don't really want to see that. But I guess I have to find some way to really um. What am I doing actually? I don't know. I'm tired. But one one day I'm actually going to be able to actually achieve any sort of mystical accelerationist warfare, and then anyone can thank me for everything that I've done for all of you, which is just mysticism. And I had a dream where where I think it was that I got doxxed because of this channel. Yeah, it was a dream though. Yeah, because I got doxxed because I was running this channel, and I was like, it's a dream. I need to clarify, but it was just like so stupid because I didn't even say anything. Actually, I don't think anyone would care if I say anything, but that's besides the point. That wasn't today, that wasn't yesterday, that was like 3 days ago or something. I don't know. Or is that 2 days ago? Either way, I don't know, one day I'll be able to answer how any of this mystical Yaldabaoth stuff works, and when I really am able to coherently have a creative, fluid thought that isn't rigidly stuck to the cultural mind stamps and the spirit and all of these things that are just clearly holding me back, and I truly achieve any sort of thing close to gnosis, wisdom, or spiritual depth. Maybe I could actually say something. Maybe I should just ask Yadabaoth herself. Yeah, Yadabaoth, how do I end you? How do I accelerate you to the point you just die? How do I get rid of all of humanity? And you know what? I'm ending this recording.